This is my 1990 Nissan 240sx hatch, one of the more attainable dream cars on my car bucket list in the exact spec I always wanted. And looking back at this car's history and how it wound up in my possession, it really just feels like my path was supposed to cross with this car at some point. In case you're new around here, or maybe you just need a reminder, this is my 1990 Nissan S13 hatch. Now there's a few things that make this car so special, one of which it's a slick top. The chassis has 80,000 miles on it. It was never modified until the previous owner began the restoration on it, and it was only offered to 2 people when he went to sell it, one of which being me. But I'm getting way ahead of myself because before there was the S13, there was my 1998 Cokie S14, which is sitting right next to the camera here. Now I bought my Cokie back in October of 2021, and it's safe to say when I bought it, it definitely didn't look like this. I had to source these taillights for it. I found this new old stock JDM Cokie wing for it. And truth be told, this car needed some love, but I saw potential with it. It had good bones, and I set out on a path to do a total restoration with this car. Now, before we did anything, I restored the entire interior of this car, sourcing the cleanest parts I could for it from all over around the country. From there, it was time to address some of the bigger issues with the body of this car. The rear end had been jacked up by the spare tire well, so we had to pull panels from a donor car and replace 2 back panels in the trunk to make this perfect like it was from the factory. Andy from Epitome Auto Design did a killer job on the work replacing those panels and making it look like it did from the factory. From there, he went to fit a new core support in the car, where we unfortunately discovered that the front end of the car needed to be put onto a frame rack to straighten out one of the frame rails. So from there, it went down to the team at Driven Collision Center. They did a wonderful job fixing the front end of the car, straightened it all out, got the front end fitted onto it to make sure everything fit right, and sent me on my way. From there, I reinstalled the front end because it was not on when I got it back from Driven Collision Center. And with that, we had a fresh undercoating. I completely restored the bottom of this car and it was ready to go. And while all of this was going down, I was collecting a ton of parts for this car. I have the entire suspension ready to go to make this a rolling chassis. And I tell you all of this just so you can understand just how deep I was into this S14 project already, and so you'll understand the level that I was going for with this restoration. Now, why does that matter? Well, while I was building this car, I happened to meet the previous owner of the S13. And the 2 of us ended up connecting because we were building our cars in such similar fashion. So as each of us are building these cars, we're exchanging photos back and forth of what we're doing, exchanging ideas, and just kind of helping each other along the way and comparing builds. So over the next few months, the previous owner and I are going back and forth, just sharing this journey of restoring 2 S chassis in very similar fashion. Now keep in mind, this car is way ahead of where I'm at with the S14 in terms of paint, bodywork, all that kind of stuff that's been done to it. So I'm sitting here looking at this car and just absolutely drooling over it. And in my head, I'm like, this is the build quality that I want my S14 to be one day. Like, this is what I'm going for. And to me, the way that the previous owner had talked about this car, this thing was a forever car. So you can imagine just how blown away I was when I received this message on October 19th, saying that the previous owner was toying with an idea of selling this car, which I wish so badly that I could let you into my head at that moment, because like I dropped everything that I was doing and immediately started thinking 2 things. 1, how am I gonna afford to get this car because I have to make this happen? And 2, how am I gonna make this happen fast enough that he doesn't change his mind and decide not to sell this car? Because in my head, that's what would happen to me. I would immediately list this car or advertise that I'm selling it to a friend and be like, oh, no, I can't do that. So I get this message on October 19th. We're going back and forth, talking about the car. I'm asking every question under the sun. And within 24 hours, I've let him know I'm gonna be buying this car. So we go from October 19th to 6 days later on October 25th, and this car is in my garage. All right, let's talk about the history of this car, because the history behind this car is what makes it even more special to me. And the crazy part about this car is that this car has been in Washington its entire life, since 1990. And even wilder, it was bought from a Nissan dealership less than 20 miles from my house. So this car has just been hanging around in this area where I grew up since it was produced in the 90s. And that's absolutely wild to me. So I'm the 4th owner of this car. The first owner had it for a very long time, obviously kept it completely stock. And if I'm remembering this correctly, the car was sold to the 2nd owner after the original owner had passed away. And the 2nd owner had it for some period of time more recently, because the first owner had it for a good chunk of its life. At which point the car was listed on Bring a Trailer by the 2nd owner and apparently didn't sell. Now at that point, the car got listed on Craigslist and the previous owner bought it, kept the car locally, And what's even cooler is he sent me some photos of this car from the original Craigslist listing. So you can see those up here on the screen now, and the car was just completely stock, like bone stock, beautiful condition. And the previous owner to me owned this car for 4 years. So if it has 80,000 miles on it now, you can imagine it had even less miles on it then. And this car has just been incredibly well preserved. Up until the previous owner, the car hadn't even been modified. And it hadn't been modified until he went to tear it down for this restoration. So this car, it just continues to get better and better as I'm hearing this and understanding the history of this car and why it's as immaculate as it is. So this car has never even been driven as a modified vehicle. They began the restoration on it and it's been down off the road ever since. Now, this is super cool. The previous owner sent me this photo as well of the day he first drove it after purchasing the car. Again, just super minty. Like if I was seeing this car on Craigslist, I would be absolutely freaking out. Now, it's the restoration work that was done on this car that really put me over the top on having to make this happen, because as I was restoring my S14, I dumped a ton of money and time into that car, and I understood just how time intensive and expensive a restoration like that could be. So the fact that the previous owner had already started on this restoration and really done most of the hard, expensive stuff, it was just a dream come true for me. And I've said from the beginning that this car was kind of like a big Lego kit, just ready to be put back together, which was absolutely perfect for me sitting here looking for content for the YouTube channel with a car that I was interested in. Like it was just everything lined up so perfectly with this car. And as you hear more of the story, I hope you're getting the picture of truly why I just had to make this happen. So the previous owner began by having this car completely resprayed, and it had been done in different stages, and he had someone redo the bay later. But long story short, this entire car has been repainted. The entire exterior, door jambs, engine bay, everything, and it looks absolutely beautiful. The best part about all of this is that this was a hot red car to begin with. So it's hot red from the factory, it's been repainted in a hot red. As you can imagine, I'm putting all these pieces together, and this car is just getting too perfect. I knew if I passed it up, I would never find another one like it. From the clean title, to the slick top, relatively low owners, it was unmodified until recently. Like, this is just the perfect car, not to mention the restoration work that's been done, the fact that it's the original color. Like, this was a dream come true, and quite frankly, this car very quickly became a forever car for me because I would never find another one, and I've just become so attached to it because of this cool history, and truly feeling like it was just kind of destiny for this car to end up with me. I mean, it's been living in close proximity to where I grew up and spent my entire life, minus a couple years in California. How crazy is that? And speaking of California, what makes this even wilder is, one, had I not moved back from California, I wouldn't have the space to be building cars. I wouldn't have bought the S14 because I had the space to build a car, and I wouldn't have connected with the previous owner on this car. So there's just this chain link of events that really made this possible. So you can understand why I truly feel like it was destined for this car to end up with me, to be kind of a centerpiece of the Avenged brand and YouTube channel, and why this car is just so special. Like, I feel so attached to this car already, despite the fact that I've owned it for less than 6 months and have never driven it. So the other major piece of this restoration that was a huge selling point for me was the fact that the bottom of this car had already been restored. This was something I had just finished doing on the S14, and if you've been following that build, you know that's pretty much where we left off with that build. Right around the time that I was getting that car back from having the undercoating done, I picked up the S13, and the S14 has been on hold ever since. But because I had just done that on the S14, I know how much time and effort it takes to do that, and I know just how much money it cost. And let me tell you, it's not cheap. To be totally transparent with you guys, I think it was somewhere north of $3,000 to have the car sandblasted, new black epoxy primer laid down, new seam sealer put on, and finishing off with that chip and stone guard from UNTOLD. Now, fortunately for you guys, the person who did the restoration on the bottom of this car filmed the entire process. So I've gone and pulled some of the clips from his YouTube video showing this being done, and God bless him because he did this all on jack stands, and I feel for the man. But this car was completely stripped down to bare metal. They used POR 15 or POR 15, I don't know how you say it, but a rust prevention on the bare metal, put down new primer, new seam sealer, and finished off with a black Raptor liner that looks absolutely phenomenal. Man, well, that was super fun, kind of taking a walk down memory lane of when I bought this car 6 months ago. And whether you've been following the build from the start or you just found my channel today, I hope you guys enjoyed getting to hear a little bit more about this super special S13. It's not common that you find them in this condition these days, and it's super uncommon to be able to trace the lineage of the car all the way back to the original owner. So I feel like the story really makes this car even that much more special. I just want to take a little bit of time to share that with you guys today. If you did just find the channel and this is your first time seeing the S13, there's a whole playlist with at least 10 videos of getting the interior restored and back into this car, and we're gonna be starting on the suspension very soon to get this car down on the ground and ready for its debut at WeekFest in June later this year. So if you're not already, make sure you hit that subscribe button, throw this video a like, and I'll see you guys in the next one.